Hello everyone, my name is Nilotpal Sinha and I am a postdoctoral researcher in the Computer Vision Research Group called CVI2 under S&T of University of Luxembourg. I will be presenting our work on hardware-aware neural architecture search using representation similarity metric. This work was funded by the Luxembourg National Research Fund (FNR). The presentation will be divided in 4 sections. In motivation, I will outline the novelty of our proposed method with respect to the previous related works. In the proposed methods section, I will give details of our method, followed by the experiment section, and ending with the conclusion and future works. Most hardware-aware neural architecture search algorithms have 2 parts. The first part is finding the neural network with the maximum accuracy for a given task. This is normally the bottleneck part and is responsible for the huge computational resource requirements. The second part is the hardware constraint, which guides the search method to find architectures specific to a hardware. Normally, rejection sampling is used for the hardware constraint, wherein the sampled architecture is rejected whenever the hardware cost of the sampled architecture does not satisfy the hardware cost constraint. In contrast, our proposed method searches for neural architecture with maximal representation similarity metric with respect to a reference model. The representation similarity metric measures how similar the hidden layer representation of an architecture is with respect to the reference model. This is in general faster than calculating the accuracy of the architecture because representation similarity metric measurement requires a single training batch. For the hardware constraint, we use a penalty term which penalizes the search method whenever the hardware cost of the sampled architecture does not satisfy the hardware cost constraint. This is in general faster than the rejection sampling whenever the hardware cost constraint is low. This is because the number of sampled architectures rejected increases exponentially in the rejection sampling method as the hardware cost constraint goes lower. In contrast, the penalty method does not reject any sampled architectures even when the hardware cost constraint goes lower. Now I will provide more details of our proposed method. Our proposed method takes 2 inputs, target edge device and the target hardware cost constraint for that edge device. The output of the method is the architecture that gives the maximal representation similarity metric under the target hardware cost constraint for that target edge device. We perform the architecture search for 6 different edge devices, which will be presented in the experiment section. Now I will present the results of the experiments that were performed using our proposed method. Here we present the results of the architecture search for the search space called OFA using flops as the hardware constraint for the classification task on ImageNet dataset. The search space constitutes finding the optimal parameters of the different operations present between different nodes. From the table, we see that our method is able to find good performing architectures at very low computational cost measured in terms of GPU hours. We first performed the architecture search on the search space called NAS201 using different hardware cost constraints. The search space constitutes finding the best set of operations between different nodes for the classification task. Here we present the results of the architecture search for 6 different edge devices using hardware latency as the hardware cost metric. In each subfigure, we show the results of the architecture search under different hardware latency constraints for 3 different datasets, that is, CIFAR10, CIFAR100, and ImageNet 16120. From the figure, we can see that our proposed method is able to find the architecture closer to the best possible architecture, which is shown as the dashed line in each subfigure. We also performed the architecture search on NAS201 using flops as a hardware cost metric. Note that the flops is agnostic to different edge devices. From the figure, we see similar results wherein our proposed method is able to find architectures closer to the best possible architecture, which is shown as the dashed line. Here we show the different hardware latencies of the architecture search when flops is used as the hardware cost constraint. As seen in the figure, hardware latencies of some architectures with lower flops is higher than the hardware latencies of some architectures with higher flops. This shows that the flop is not a good indicator of the hardware cost. Here we present the effect of the use of the representation similarity metric in the hardware-aware architecture search. The figure shows the test accuracy of the reference model and the discovered architectures under different hardware cost constraints for 3 different datasets. As we can see from the figure, our proposed method is able to find architectures with similar performance as the reference model under different flop constraints. Here we show the effectiveness of the penalty term over the rejection sampling. The plot shows the number of samples required to create a population of size 50. As we can see from the figure, the number of samples required increases exponentially for the rejection sampling as the flop constraints reduces. In contrast, the penalty term in our proposed method requires the same number of samples for any flop constraints. In conclusion, we propose an innovative approach to solving the hardware-aware neural architecture search problem using representation similarity metric and penalty term. We show that the proposed method is able to find good performing architectures at significantly lower computational costs. We also show the robustness of our proposed method on 6 different edge devices. For the future works, we are planning to extend the method for tasks other than the classification tasks. Thank you for your attention.